Steele. I am the executive director of Faith and Prejudice. I'm super excited about today's conversation around the theological and practical application of conciliation. And so I read somewhere that conciliation is defined as an act of peacemaking, whereas reconciliation is an act of peacemaking between two parties who were once peaceful but have since moved to a status of conflict. And so reconciliation requires that two warring parties must have once been at peace in the past, whereas conciliation does not. And so what we're saying at Faith and Prejudice is that there has never been a time in this country where we've been on one accord as it relates to race relations. And so we cannot reconcile something that has never been on one accord. Thus, we're using the term conciliation. And so today I'm so honored and grateful to be joined by two pastors who lead congregations in their local area. They're doing the work of undoing injustice and increasing racial equity within the local Nashville area. I'm joined today by Bishop Joseph Walker III. He is the senior pastor of the Mount Zion Baptist Church of Nashville. I'm also joined by Pastor Mike Glenn, who is the senior pastor of the Brentwood Baptist Church of Brentwood, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Nashville. Welcome to both of you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Antoine.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so before we begin, I would really love for each of you to introduce yourselves to our audience, to provide some context on the histories of the churches you both lead. And so we'll start with you, Bishop Walker, and then we'll hear from Pastor Glenn.
So thank you, Antoine. Mount Zion Church was founded in 1866 during Reconstruction in the United States. It is a historical landmark in North Nashville. North Nashville is in the 37208 zip code, currently represents the most incarcerated zip code in the United States. A variety of challenges around that community, yet a variety of hope. We lead a congregation that is surrounded by Meharry Medical College, Fisk University, Tennessee State University, and so a variety of higher education institutions around us. Mount Zion is a church, diverse. It's grown from 175 folks when I got there to now over 33,000 folks, and in the virtual space as well. We have 3 locations throughout the Nashville community, and Mount Zion Church is a multi-generational, multi-ethnic church given to community, given to empowerment economically and educationally, with really a 4-pillar approach of faith, family, fitness, and finance, and economic empowerment, helping people get to that next level. And so, we are continuing to be a beacon of hope within the Nashville community. So that's who Mount Zion is.
Absolutely. So Mount Zion is actually not only one of the largest Black churches or the largest Black church in Nashville, but it is actually one of the oldest churches organized in Nashville. So it's safe to say that it is a pillar of the community that it resides in and that it serves. Absolutely. Powerful. That's really powerful. Pastor Glenn, you too lead one of the largest predominantly white churches in Brentwood, Tennessee. Could you provide us with a little bit of context as it relates to the history of your church and really its significance to the community?
Brentwood Baptist Church was founded about 50 years ago by Woodmont Baptist Church, which is in the Green Hills area of Nashville. As Nashville has grown, the suburbs have grown, and folks have started moving further and further south. Brentwood was one of the first subdivisions of Nashville. And people would live, go to school in Brentwood, and then drive into Nashville to work. Our church has had 2 pastors, and I am the second of those over our 50-year history. I've been here 30 years. August will be 30 years. And we have 8 campuses throughout Middle Tennessee, several in the Nashville area. And we're eager to not only help people find who they are in Christ and find that relationship and salvation, but also, as Bishop has pointed out, find their best life and their best calling on how to impact the world for the kingdom of God and his gospel.
Absolutely. That's powerful. So really, it's safe to say that, 2 large congregations who are on opposite sides of town are doing very similar work. They're doing the work of economic development, community advancement, creating partnerships and relationships, and really just helping people become the best versions of themselves. And so in light of these histories, it's really interesting that the pastors of the largest predominantly white and Black churches decided to come together and create a partnership called Better Together. So Bishop Walker, if you would, could you talk a little bit about how that partnership came to be? Provide our viewers with sort of an insight into how did that process start? Who reached out to who? Really, what did that look like? And then also, if you'll talk a little bit about the programs and initiatives of the partnership to date.
Well, thank you. So it really began with a friendship between Mike and myself. Mike reached out to me asking about, social media. He was interested in learning a little bit more about my engagement in that area.
This guy is a social media ninja. I don't know if you, but this guy is like one of the best across every platform.
Oh gosh.
And so I called him and said, man, you got to coach me up on this.
And from that grew just a tremendous friendship. It really was a providential moment, we believe, that God would use that medium of communication and connectivity to connect us personally and to connect our congregations. And we realized that we had very similar passions regarding the community. We realized that we had several challenges in both of our congregations, and we felt the need to really center our churches around what it means to really work together to get things done, and what it means to really have those tough conversations. And so I was invited to share with Mike's staff about, what it really means to be an African American in, Nashville. And,
Absolutely.
it was a very eye-opening experience for me.
It was hard to hear.
Yeah. And, I was sharing with Mike some of my own experiences of just even driving to, in Brentwood area, as an African-American, et cetera. And Mike has come to our church and taught leadership and shared as well. And so we've kind of really had a very reciprocal relationship in terms of, our pouring into each other. And then our churches have worked together, and it really moved into a larger opportunity. We've hosted for several years a back to school outreach campaign that really helped underserved communities in terms of backpacks, free screenings. We had partners throughout the city, health partners and others. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to really come together, and Brentwood came alongside us and to help us expand the services that we initially had put forth. And as a consequence, Brentwood volunteers came from everywhere. And it was an amazing thing to see Black and white and young and old working together in North Nashville, in the epicenter of the Black community, getting things done. And so it just began there, and it just continues to mushroom into even greater things.
Absolutely. And so what I hear you saying is that it's really important not only to create a partnership, but really the foundation of the partnership is friendship.
And I think that's one of the things that surprised both of our churches is they weren't surprised that he and I were friends. What surprised them was they found friends in each congregation. The accountants in his church found the accountants in my church, and the lawyers found each other, and some of them knew each other but didn't know where they went to church. And so this weaving together the congregation started with our friendship, but it's on down into staffs. We've had several of his staff come over and teach our staff on some of the things they're doing. Our communications teams work back and forth together, and there's just a genuine we just love his staff and his team and his church. They're a lot of fun to be with. And so not only are we stealing all the good ideas, we are we just love hanging around them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's really important to just step outside of your comfort zone, reach out to somebody that may or may not look like you, and then you just really never know what'll happen. I think it's amazing that you guys have created that friendship, and your congregations have come together and really created lasting, lifelong friendships and relationships. Pastor Glenn, as a white pastor, honestly, you don't have to do this work. You could literally go about your life, remain silent, preach, teach at conferences across the country, and never make any type of mention about racial equality and racial conciliation. And so I'm curious, really, what makes you come back to this work, both personally and theologically?
Baltimore had an incident, and the politicians answered, and Baltimore rioted. Charleston, South Carolina had an incident, and Mother Church, Church Emmanuel, answered, and Charleston had a revival. This issue of racial reconciliation is going to be solved. If it's going to be solved, it will be solved by the church, by the people of God and the good news of the gospel.
Absolutely.
And so growing up in Alabama, I understand racism. It was the air that I breathed, and I am committed that in order to fully preach the gospel, it's got to be preached in every color. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head. I just want to make that it can't be just a white gospel or a black gospel or any of that. It's got to be because there's something about the glory of God and the majesty of God that cannot be shown by one person or one people group.
Absolutely.
That really what convinces the world that there's something different is when they see all of the people coming together, every different ethnic group, language, style of worship, coming together to bring glory to God. Then they say, okay, now there may be something. And so for the good of our city and for the people that we love, that we both love in this city, our churches have to be the ones stepping out going, this is the way God intended it.
Absolutely. And I think here at Faith and Prejudice, we share similar values and perspectives in that we believe that, change will not happen in this country until it first happens in the heart of the church. The church is really going to be, on the front lines of really moving us toward racial equality and racial equity in this country. And so thank you for really pointing that out. I'm sort of shifting to you, Bishop, in a similar vein. If we move beyond the optics of, bringing together two of the largest white and black congregations and really what that means, it's really easy as a black man, or rather it could be easy as a black man to say, I pastor a thriving black church. This is really not my work to be doing. I have to confront racism daily, and my congregants live this reality daily as well. It's really not our responsibility to extend an olive branch, to really be open to educating and hearing our white brothers and sisters. And so really, I'm curious, what is the biblical mandate that creates the foundation for this work from your perspective?
Well, clearly, I think that a good survey of the scriptures and, really helps us understand that the role of the church really does deal with these social issues of the day. Jesus Christ clearly was concerned about the least, the last, and the left out. He certainly made several references in terms of, particularly in Luke 4:18, as you know, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor, to set those at liberty who are, well, let's look at it. That is a social agenda, right? And I think that when you process that for leadership, regardless of the size of the church, but more importantly, being an African-American leader, I think it's ministerial malpractice not to approach the social issues in our community from the gospel perspective. I think that the whole gospel has to be preached, and it is a gospel of liberation. It is what I believe James Cone talks about and others when they look at liberation theology and understanding that the narrative of the Exodus, the most prolific story told in the Old Covenant, is still relevant today of God being on the side of the oppressed and how we push that forth. I do think one of the things I did not want to be guilty of is prophetic laryngitis. I did not want to be a leader who would not speak to those ills and issues. And a part of that is, is education. I look at it, kind of as a triple E approach. It's really about education. It's about equipping, and it's about engagement. Educating is this hard part, because often a lot of folks who are oblivious to the racial climate or issues or what it means to be Black in America, what it means, they really are. Some people are racist and some people are ignorant, and they don't know that they're racist. And so educating people, and that's the beauty of our relationship. I'm learning from Mike, I'm learning how white people think. He's learning how black people think. It's a fun, we have some fun conversations, right? But it's a great way to learn. We're open to that. And so that's education. That's helping people. There are people, who don't believe that systemic racism exists. And, my courageous friend here has to really break that down to folks in this congregation. So as a leader, I have a responsibility to educate not only my congregation, but educate communities of faith who don't look like me. And then, of course, equipping. What are the tools? What are we going to do about it? It's one thing to have a moment of lamentation, but we have to equip people with the tools, economic tools, and you have to provide resources and, the prisoner pipeline stuff. You got to deal with that stuff and help people. And then the idea of engagement is huge. How do you get people to come alongside your work and really impact the community? And so for us, we found the sweet spot of engagement. You can't really have full engagement until you have full buy-in, until people understand the why. And that's been the beauty of our relationship. And that's been really at the core for me theologically in my role. Of course, I could sit back, pastor Mount Zion, and say, these issues, I'm insulated within the stained glass. But one thing is certain, COVID-19 has amplified these issues even more. What we've seen in the last 24 months, we could just use that, but certainly during the time of COVID, if the church does not address these issues, she becomes irrelevant, and as a consequence, runs the risk of, no longer being effective. And efficacy is a big word, right? In every sense of the word. In order for us to have full efficacy in our communities, we've got to address these issues completely.
Historically, the church has done three things better than anybody. We've done healthcare better than anybody. Every hospital in Nashville has a faith-based beginning. As I tell my atheist friends, I never see a hospital that says Saint Nothing. Okay, they don't do it. We do poverty better than anybody, and we do education better than anybody. And what has happened is the church has surrendered all of that to the secular forces, and they've pretty much failed. Now, the interesting thing about my congregation is they want to make a difference, but they're not going to make a token difference. If you're asking me to go march in a parade, and at the end of the day, we come back to the same place we left, I'm not going to do that. And I told our congregation, I said, there are young men and young women who were born in Nashville, who are talented, gifted, inspiring young men and women. You would love them if you met them. They do not have a chance because of where they were born. Now, we can talk all we want to about the land of opportunity, but it's not true for certain people who live in Nashville. That cycle has caught them even when they're born. And that cycle of poverty and despair is almost impossible to break unless somebody helps you. And what we can do is step in and say, here is a way out. And we have the resources to provide job training, financial backing, all of those things to break the cycle with the integrity of the gospel, because what the gospel does is it gives a man and a woman back their dignity. Say, this is who you are as a child of God. And because of that, because now you are one of ours, Mount Zion is one of ours. The members of Mount Zion are one of ours. Then we are responsible to you and for you, and will be held accountable before God for our response to you. And if Mount Zion says we have hungry children near our Jefferson Street church, if we do not respond, then we'll be judged harshly for that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you both just preached the sermon. I call them, I know, Bishop, you said the 3 E's, and then Pastor Mike, I'm going to give you 2 others. You said, Bishop, you said education, equipping, and then engagement. And then Pastor Mike, you said enrichment and empowerment. So I think those 5 things are really critical. And so for any pastors or church leaders who may be watching this, that may say, I don't really have the time or energy to devote to this. Or they may even say, I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing. I'll get it wrong. I really don't know what to say.
You will say the wrong thing. You will say the wrong thing.
Yes.
But he knows it's because I don't fully understand. And so he'll bring me aside and say, don't say that. here's how they heard it. I know what you meant, but here's how they heard it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that.
This work is about becoming.
Yeah.
This work is about becoming, never really arriving. We are always learning. We are constant students. I am learning from him. He's learning from me. For leaders who do this work, you must be willing to make yourself a perpetual student.
Mm-hmm.
And culture is changing and looking at ways to be more inclusive in your congregation, more diverse and understanding the nuances. Church will never be the same post-COVID. And it's important for us to have these, very important discussions and sensitivity trainings and have these, kind of re-examining our leadership models, our orthodoxies and orthopraxies, and all these things to really become who we need to become. So, I mean, really, you're going to misstep. Yeah, that's the whole point of it, right? We're going to misstep. We're going to say things. We're going to get angry at each other. We're going to, we're going to cry together. We're going to, come by y'all together. But at the end of the day, we're in it. We're in it together. And that's the issue. We're in it together. If there's anything we saw that was different, I should say this, that we saw in George Floyd, and the response from George Floyd's situation was that those protests were diverse. That white, black, Asian, Hispanic were marching side by side because they were in it together. They saw injustice together. That is it. When we are together, man, I'm telling you, I tell people all the time, I don't care if you don't have but two teeth, they look better together.
Absolutely. Pastor Mike, what word of encouragement would you have, just sort of finally, what word of encouragement would you have for those that are watching that may or may not be struggling with wanting to do this work?
Don't rob yourself of the blessing. Whatever, you know how it is with God. Whatever you're afraid of losing, you get back and by the truckload. Whatever, and he's always telling me, man, you're taking a big risk, and I'm not aware of anything that I have given up or lost. But I can tell you how much better my life is because he's my friend, and how much fun I have digging him. When we tweet, we tweet every day or text every day and dogging each other about something, and I just would hate to think of my life without him in it. I'm being really honest. I mean, it's that level for me. And if he called me and said, I'd ask questions when I got there. And COVID was harder on him and his community than mine, because COVID hit the Black community very differently than it hit a lot of other communities. It got to the point where it was a little hard on him. So, I was the one going, hey, you got to stay in this for the long haul. And because you have people who are counting on you all over the nation. I understand one of my roles in his life is to be his wingman. Because I think there is a significant anointing on, and this, you go to this church, that the power and the authority that this guy carries, and he needs to have people having his back so he can take that platform without fear. That's what I pray for him.
And I think that really just speaks to not only the power of friendship, but it also speaks to the need that a lot of pastors have, because I don't think that a lot of pastors have the ability to confide in other pastors and really be honest and be vulnerable and say, hey, man, you messed up. Hey, man, you shouldn't have said that. Or did you think about this differently? And so I really think that for our audience, this will be certainly valuable in the sense that it really provides an inside perspective on the power of friendship.
Yeah. And tell you that and love you anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I got enough people in my church telling me where I mess up. What I don't have is somebody who is telling me that to make me better.
Yeah. And that's important.
That's what this guy does.
That's very important. Yeah. No shameless plug, but I mean, really, my last book, Leadership and Loneliness, part of that book, I wrote about this plight of the loneliness that leaders feel of finding strategic and meaningful relationships. And, I talk about what this friendship means to me and how it's important when you can find someone you can be transparent with and trust. can navigate you through all of those different seasons. Proverbs 17:17, a friend loveth at all times. A brother is born for adversity. I mean, I believe that with all of my heart. And so I feel the same way. I don't know what I would do without him. God did this, and it's a wonderful thing to behold. And I believe that, when Paul and Silas, on their second missionary journey, and they have this mission ahead of them, and they see this damsel being exploited, and in Acts 16, they literally could have continued on the initial mission, but Paul was troubled in his spirit. And as a pastor, as a leader, if it doesn't trouble you, if the detour doesn't trouble you, the convenient path is to just say, this is my assignment, I'm going here. But when you see injustice and it doesn't trouble you, or you have a comrade that can say, hey man, we need to pause and deal with this, then you need new friends. Yeah.
You need new friends.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I just want to say that the doors of the church are open. You both have preached.
That's right.
This is amazing content. But on a serious note, as we close today, Pastor Glenn, if you wouldn't mind leading us in a word of prayer, not only for our nation, but really for the church and the necessary role that it must play in not only confronting, but also dismantling systemic racism.
We're glad to. Let's pray to you. You said that we are the light of the world. But if it is dark where we are, it is not because the darkness is won, it's because the light has failed. So I pray you would ignite in each of us the light that you are, that we may shine for our world, that we may shine for each other, and that in your churches, blacks and whites together, every nation, every tongue, every language, every people group, every style will come together in a way that makes us eager for heaven. And we pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you both for your time today. Thank you for your transparency and really providing, an example to pastors of how you can really reach across and talk to people that don't necessarily look like you. We really appreciate you all.
Thank you, Antoine.
All right. And thank you all for watching.